Wookiees are one of the most recognizable species in Star Wars, being featured in just about every show and movie. And of course, the creature is native to Kashyyyk and is known for its size, strength, and furry body. And of course, we all know Chewbacca, who was the co-pilot to Han Solo and had countless adventures across the galaxy. And it makes sense that Chewbacca was a pilot, as Wookiees were known to be spacefaring species. They were one of the first to map out the slice, the location that Kashyyyk is within the galaxy, and Chewbacca continues the legacy of spacefaring Wookiees. But let's take a look at some other Wookiees inside of the Star Wars galaxy. At this point, I think we all may be familiar with Black Krrsantan, who was a bounty hunter, but early in his life, Krrsantan was forced to flee his homeworld of Kashyyyk and subsequently disgraced by his people for infighting and challenging leadership. After his banishment, he sought out the pit-fighting crime bosses of the Chantin brothers. Krrsantan willingly fought in the arenas to gain knowledge of their operations, and also to gain skill as a hand-to-hand fighter. But he wanted to exact revenge on the slavers who frequently captured Wookiees and sold them into slavery or had them fight in the arenas to their death. Being a very successful fighter inside of the arena, he quickly met some of the leaders who ran the fight pit, and it turns out they were Trandoshans. And Black Krrsantan, despite his notoriety within the fight pits, decided to get revenge on the Trandoshans, killing them and disturbing their operations. And in some way, I think that this is him trying to regain his honor amongst Wookiees after he was banished from Kashyyyk. Later, he would become the bounty hunter we all know and love, being hired by numerous crime syndicates and even Darth Vader to hunt down Obi-Wan Kenobi. I definitely think this is one of the cooler Wookiees we get to see within the Star Wars universe, and of course he's more loved in the comics and books, and I definitely think it was a missed opportunity with him in the Book of Boba Fett that his character overall could have been better in that TV show. But moving on, the next Wookiee we're going to be focusing on is Tarfful, who was the Wookiee leader during the Clone Wars and the rebel leader on Kashyyyk during the Galactic Civil War. He was a Wookiee chieftain of Kachiro, which was the capital city on Kashyyyk, and a general of the armed forces on Kashyyyk as well, and of course was an old friend to Chewbacca. He defended Kashyyyk during the Clone Wars and witnessed the betrayal of the clones and the rise of the Empire. Watching his family being rounded up for slavery, he fled into the deep swamps of Kashyyyk to lead a rebellion cell to fight the Empire during their occupation of Kashyyyk. Unfortunately, he was eventually rounded up by the Empire and became a slave and was destined to build the Death Star. Up next is one of the first Jedi Wookiees that we have on the list, Gungi, who was a Jedi youngling during the Clone Wars and was one of the few Jedi that were actually Wookiees. And during Order 66, he survived the onslaught, but he was caught by the droid criminal syndicate known as Vanguard Axis to be turned into the Empire. He was rescued by the Bad Batch and returned to Kashyyyk to fight the Empire and the slavers who now controlled the Wookiees planet. And we don't know what happens to him during the reign of the Empire, so we certainly could see more of this character in the future, and I wouldn't be surprised if he also fought alongside Tarfful's rebel cell as well on Kashyyyk. Other Wookiee Jedi that we know about mostly come from the High Republic. Recently in the Acolyte, we got to see Kelnacca, who was living in isolation on the planet Kofar, which appeared to be very similar to the jungles of Kashyyyk, and he was unfortunately killed by Smilo Ren. But it appeared that he had abandoned his post on Kofar and decided to live in the forest as just the Jedi who had to occupy that planet at that time. Locals say they had more contact with him during the early phases, but again he retreated into the forest to live a peaceful life. And Burryaga was also a High Republic Jedi who fought against the Nile during the Great Hyperspace Disaster, and he was one of the first Jedi to discover the Drengir, the other villains during the High Republic era. So far, we don't get too many Wookiees that turn out to be Jedi, and I would definitely like to see more of them and more of them be used, as Kelnacca was barely in the Acolyte despite him being one of the characters I was looking forward to, and Burryaga only appears in the novels so far. The final Wookiee we're going to be looking at is Grozz, who appears in the video game Star Wars Hunters, and he was a professional Huttball player where he gained a significant fame across the galaxy. He eventually traveled to Vespara to take part in the arena combat on that planet, and he already was famous and he continued to gain fame and notoriety on Vespara for being a fearsome warrior. Honestly, I think it's interesting that he decided to fight in the arenas for profit and fame, as opposed to people like Krrsantan, who used it to dismantle slaving operations, and other Wookiees who decided to fight the Empire and those who killed and used Wookiees for slave labor. And typically within the Star Wars universe, Wookiees, like I said, are one of the most notable creatures we know in Star Wars, but every time we get to see them, they only appeared to be slaves or background characters. There are very few characters inside of the Star Wars universe that are Wookiees that we know a great detail amount. So I definitely think on the overall, Wookiees need to be expanded upon because we already know the species, we're familiar with them. And of course, Chewbacca is one of the most notable, if not the most notable Wookiee, and I think his time has ended as a Star Wars character that is being expanded upon, so someone definitely needs to take the reign as the Wookiee inside of the Star Wars universe that we all look up to and appreciate as a character. So with that, those are some Wookiees inside of the Star Wars universe. Comment down below which ones I missed and which ones you want to see in later videos, and until next video, subscribe if you would like, and goodbye.